Hello, I'm Eran Solomon, and before we continue our journey with the next Sefirah, Sefirat Chesed, it is now time to talk, perhaps it's better to talk first about the difference between the first three Sefirot, which we have already talked about, the Keter, Chokhmah, and Bina, and the other seven from Chesed to Malchut. But even before that, it is time to explain where each Sefirah is situated in the body. Because as I've already explained in the first three, Keter, which is above the mind, is crowning the brain, is actually the skull. Whereas Chokhmah and Bina are the two halves, the two lobes of the brain. So the first three are basically in the head, which means that the next seven from Chesed to Malchut are actually all from the neck down in the body itself. Now there's a question about creation that you may have asked yourselves, or maybe not. But anyway, if there are indeed 10 Sefirot, and as there are 10 Sefirot, why is it that there are only 7 days in the week? This may seem a strange question, but measuring time has a lot to do with nature. Days are, of course, determined by the turning of the earth around itself. Months have to do with the cycle of the moon. Years, the earth spinning around the sun. But weekdays seem to have no hold in any natural phenomenon. It all has to do with the story of the Torah about 7 days of creation. Actually, the only thing that I know of in nature which has a module of 7 returning to the first unit after full 7 is the musical scale. But that's for another time. But anyway, if there are 10 Sefirot, why is it that there are only 7 days in a week and not 10? And here we understand that our world is a world without a head, as it were. The first 3 Sefirot are just too much. They're too elevated for this world. But it is our job to draw down, stream in, we would say today perhaps download, the illumination of those 3 first Sefirot, which is also called the Mochin, brain illumination, to this world, as it were, giving it a head, elevating it into a full human stature. But as it is, without ample preparation, the light of the first 3 could be disastrous. Indeed, the epoch of the year which we are now in has all to do with the first 3, because these 3 weeks which are called Telata de Puranuta, 3 weeks of calamity, which begin with 17 Tammuz, ending with Tisha B'Av, and as they're followed by Shavda Nechamata, 7 weeks of consolation, we have to assume it is again the differentiation between the first 3 Sefirot and the 7 latter Sefirot. And we find it extraordinary that the bad period is the most elevated. But here comes our tradition that these 3 weeks of calamity we believe will become days of happiness. New holidays, actually. This is because, as I've said, without ample preparation of a vessel to hold the sublime light of the first 3, when this light comes down forcefully, there is that calamity which is called Shevirat HaKelim, which is a very important issue in Kabbalah, which we will have to speak of Bezrat Hashem later in the future. But it is still our job to do the utmost to make an ample vessel for that light through bettering our actions and doing teshuvah. And then all the fasting days will be indeed transformed into sason v'simcha, joy and gaiety. But until that day, it is the 7 lowest Sefirot which are to give us consolation. And those would indeed lead us up to Rosh Hashanah and indeed the days of repentance, to strive to be better. Okay, so that's about it concerning the difference between the first 3 Sefirot and the 7 lower Sefirot. And we're now ready for the first Sefirah in the 7 lower Sefirot, called Chesed in our next lesson, Bezrat Hashem, of a guide to the depths of the Torah. So until then, bye bye.